Welcome to WAY2B TV, where there's a better way to be than atheist or theist. In the video this evening, we are continuing to consider how resistance to being in the way plays itself out in life. This week, the ancient writer has the ancient speaker talking about how provision comes. Is it from a God or from other human beings? After 11.5 minutes of speaking, the ancient writer has the ancient speaker begin his closing remarks. We're down to the 2-minute warning. To this point, we've heard the ancient writer's rendition of the ancient speaker's contiguous line of thought. That is, thus far, he communicated a shift from just doing religion to being in the way. He has the speaker continue by explaining to his religious leaders the manner in which provision comes. Before she died, my mother used to say, "Why blame God?" She was referring to the Christian habit of giving a God credit for everything that happens, while denying one's own responsibility. In a manner of speaking, I think this was similar to Jesus' point. One of the big questions throughout history has been, why is there so much human suffering in the world? Is it because a God wills it so? Or could it be that we lack the compassion or the political will to address the problem ourselves? In the ancient text, the speaker speaks of ask, seek, and knock, how one will be provided for in the same manner in which one understands providing for others. The intended visceral response from the ancient speaker's listeners, known as people of the way, is simple. If someone asks, people of the way want to give to them. Someone seeks, people of the way want to help them to find. Someone knocks, people of the way want to open the door for them. Note the humanity in the text. The metaphor is about parents and children. When I was young, my parents provided my needs whether I had been good that day or not. The ancient writer has Jesus ask, wouldn't your parent within you do the same? Then the writer has the ancient speaker compare your Father in heaven with your parents. I refer you again to the For Heaven's Sakes playlist on our channel for a fuller understanding of this phrase. This leader of your inward household, your Father, is within you. You may be thinking, no way, Elise. But one only need look at the very next sentence. Is the speaker speaking of a kingdom beyond the clouds or to a kingdom within you? Where does provision originate? The therefore is there for a reason. About 10 minutes ago, the ancient writer has the ancient speaker say that he intended to fulfill the law and the prophets. The telling is therefore in the very next sentence. The speaker summarizing therefore statement historically known as the golden rule. Therefore, however you want people to treat you, so treat them. For this is the law and the prophets. As Mom said, why blame God? It is the condition of the attitude within each of us, within our kingdom of heaven, that limits how much suffering in the world gets addressed. Both modern atheists and modern theists seem to enter life by the same broad gate. All either one talk about is religion. Wouldn't we address the suffering in the world? Or we just don't care?
I think we do care deeply about the ones that we know about, the people that we hear about, even the animals that are being abused or oppressed or whatever. And we follow whatever causes we can. But our circles are finite. The world is not, but our circles are. And we can only touch or make a difference to so many people. If everybody was able to tend to their circle in kind and gentle ways, It might not make a big difference in that person's life, but it could make a small difference, which would cause them to have more self confidence and maybe help them deal with their own stuff in a better way.
We always say that's this big question, but it's not really that big a question. There are billions of people on this planet and millions of children that die every day from no water, millions of children that die from starvation, uh, millions of human beings living in conditions that you and I cannot even hardly imagine. With that said, I think there's a narrower focus that you can take, and that is you can do something about the people around you. Yeah, read us what Jan said.
I have one from Jan and one from Amber.
Okay.
Jan says, I think that when we acknowledge the fact that we can only influence within each other's circles, it becomes somewhat of a discouraging journey, and it does. Amber says, I think we can affect a change outside of our circles just as easily as inside of our circles if you're willing. And that's true because if whenever we're encouraged on a regular basis to step outside the box and try something different,
Right.
which is, and it's just too comfortable inside my box sometimes.
Okay, well, I agree with everything that Joni said and a lot of the stuff, most of the stuff that you said. One of the things that I see too is that we put all the responsibility for changing the world on our government, and yet 90% of the people don't vote.
And if you've ever pastored a church, it's blaringly obvious, and that is that the needy are not in the church. They're not in the church because they don't feel comfortable there. We can do something about the people within our reach, okay? But overall, it would seem that as a world, the reason there's so much suffering in the world is because there just aren't that many people who really want to do anything about it.
I always try to pay it forward, even if it's $1 for overdue book fees. I've done it for years, which is why I really like the businesses like the cafes that have what they call a pending coffee or a sandwich. Somebody comes in and buys their coffee and then puts one on the pending list for someone who's homeless. And I think that's an absolutely wonderful thing. Churches used to be open all the time overnight so people could come in and seek shelter.
Right.
But that's no longer the case. And like I said, I had something from the Dalai Lama. He said when he was very young, he was very reactive to news. And then he said after 60 years, he says, if I hear disturbing news, but do not have a calm and clear mind, then the initial reaction may be, oh, I must do something. This is very bad. But if at a deeper level, we stay calm and lucid, and then we will make better responses.
And we in the process we kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater, I think, to a degree, because
there you go.
we're trying to cure problems. We're afraid we're going to take on problems that we don't want, and therefore we're inactive altogether. Right. Jan, I think Jan commented on the chat room. Joni, I think she said something exactly like that.
I think people feel overwhelmed when thinking about all the suffering in the world. Being overwhelmed breeds inaction.
The most that most of us do is give money to different causes, and that's like most of us can't even afford to do that, but we do it, because we don't have the courage, I think, to be hands-on and to really make a difference. It's hard not being selfish. It's hard.
And the federal government itself, we shelter religion from contributing to the government itself and the operation of the government itself, and yet we have a religious system in this country right now that so influences government and so overwhelms government with what it wants. There has always been this tacit arrangement between government and the Christian religion. The first recorded tax exemption for churches was during the Roman Empire when Constantine, emperor of Rome from 306 to 337, okay, this is in the 4th century, the beginning of the 4th century, granted the Christian church a complete exemption from all forms of taxation following his supposed conversion to Christianity. In other words, Constantine converted to Christianity. Now, We sometimes don't understand that all of the pomp and circumstance and all the ceremonial things and much of the governmental things that we do in churches today came from Constantine when he blended the church with the government and when he himself became part of the Christian religion. So that's where that came from. Jesus was never in a pointy hat walking down an aisle holding a cross in front of his chest with his 12 minions following in similar garb. Okay?
Dressed all in white.
That's not the way it worked. Okay? But all of that came from that time of Constantine, the Christian church and all of its ritual. The law against churches intervening in political campaigns was passed by the U.S. Congress in 1954. Okay? That's only 60, 70 years ago. Since then, the Internal Revenue Service has been successful in using the law to revoke the tax-exempt status of only one church, the Church of Peace Creek in Birmingham, New York, which had placed an advertisement in the USA Today and the Washington Times rebuking Bill Clinton 4 days before the 1992 presidential election. They are the only church ever, okay, to lose its tax-exempt status. So that will tell you just how loose this thing is. These little old ladies are sending, $40, $50, $60 out of their Social Security check and filling their house full of Christian G-Jaws and Jim Cracks. Both those who are reputable and those who are irreputable, and I believe there are both, don't get me wrong, but they operate with total impunity.
Jan said, you don't have to go far to wonder what Jesus would have said regarding these quote-unquote Pharisees. Sounds like the IRS is enabling. And Colleen wrote, I agree, Jan, and because of the muddled writings in the IRS, it makes it too easy for anyone to create a church or religion. And then Jan says, makes one think that capitalism and religion are made of the same cloth. Yeah, Jan was talking about the satanic religion that got tax exemption. Anyway, the Four Majesties. And then it goes back to what you were saying earlier, Colleen, that anyone can create a church or religion. And then she says, hey, Colleen, do you want to start a church or religion together? And Colleen says, LOL, Jan, we sure could.
To me, it's just very disheartening that this is happening in our country, but then you've got, the politicians, we vote the same ones in over and over and over and over, expecting a different result. If you do the same thing again and again and again, expecting a different result, you're never going to get it. You've got to do something different to get the different result. And when you go ahead and say, oh yeah, it's in here, we can give them tax-exempt status, it's crazy. I remember Knights of Columbus used to give us dinners, and they did have the little box if we wanted to contribute. So never thought about that I could have deducted that for, I couldn't deduct that because I got a meal out of it.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's really sad. It's taken this country a long time to get where we are now with all of the things. And I think a lot of it's been done behind people's backs. A lot of this stuff we haven't even known about. Why should we be aware of it?
Yep.
Because we have our everyday lives that we're living in. We don't know a lot of the things that the government does. It's just a fact.
No, especially when churches have so much clout and they use it. You mentioned New York City, Pennsylvania, New York City. Yes, the Catholic Church got huge political clout there, which is why I like the new Pope, because he's saying get rid of the palaces, sell the land you're never going to use, and spread the money to people who need it in the area, which is, unheard of. And have the bishops all upset because they like their palaces.
But anyway, here come.
Jan said wave, wave, wave.
Huh?
Jan said wave,
oh,
wave,
yeah,
wave.
We always wave it then. Wave, Joni. Wave.
I did.
Okay. Good night. See y'all.